Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Cloudcast, episode 136. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
I'm Sid Gill.
And I'm Rory Summers. And a warning for you, dear listener, this episode contains subjects such as, isn't it getting dark early now? And isn't it nippy now?
No,
Nippy?
and no.
It's
roasting. It's going to be 25 degrees this weekend, you silly...
But generally, it's a little bit cooler. And isn't it getting dark now?
I have to admit, though, and I did get home tonight and thought, oh, yeah, there's a bit of nip in the air.
No, it's definitely the darkness. So at the moment, I'm still in shorts because I'm taking a new kind of tack towards clothing.
But less of it.
Well, when the clocks change,
Yeah.
I'm moving to shorts and nothing but shorts, regardless of the weather. So for the summer, in March, clocks go whichever way forwards.
Yeah, spring forward, yeah.
Shorts come out.
Right.
Shorts will go away only when the clocks go back.
Wow, okay. That's interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I like it.
It's a brave new world out there. No trousers.
Now, can I put this into context because the listeners do not know this? Sid is in fact covered by a thick, coarse fur. So, I mean, he is
an ape.
wearing normal trousers is probably like wearing those like fleecy crag hoppers you get for winter walking, you know.
It's a bit over the top, I find.
Do you know what? He's going to be that guy that walks around in the supermarket in shorts, slippers, and some kind of weird pyjamas. Except it's not pyjamas; it's his fur.
Well, it has been. I mean, this is going to gross a few folk out. It has been suggested I should shave a t-shirt into my hair.
That's hilarious.
A few people have threatened to do it.
That's so
Pin
good.
you down and do it.
No, just wait till he gets really drunk.
just literally kind of from the mid kind of upper arm. Just shave it clean. Same on the other side, and a little V in the top there.
Little V at the top, yeah, you're sorted.
Wow.
There's something wrong with you lot. I don't know how did we get to that?
Well, to be
Welcome
fair,
to this
you
board gaming
started that.
podcast.
You're the one who started about wearing less.
Yeah.
Well, it's made it. I've been so much happier this summer with this new approach to things because I've been able to put the trousers could just get put away and forgotten about. It's been quite nice.
As opposed to what? Leaving them all over the floor?
Well, no, because I've only got one. Okay, right. In our household, I have one drawer. That's my entire life fits into one drawer. There's about 5,000 drawers in the house, but I have one. Right? So
is it a kitchen drawer full of shite that you
well,
might
no,
use
I've
one
got
day?
a bit bigger than that. I've got a bit more than that. I'm going to be that kitchen drawer stores things
Potato
like
masher wedged in so you can't open it properly. Yeah.
That's useful stuff in that drawer, like lighters and candles and all that kind of jazz. Anyway, so this one drawer, you got to make most of your space. So now I can access it and it's nice and organised because I don't have to store unnecessary shite in there.
All right. So what happens? Do you like remove the trousers and you're going to store them?
I
You
shove
store
them
them
in
like in a box in a loft.
Off-site storage.
Off-site storage.
It's got a lock-up somewhere.
You don't want to be tempted.
Your winter
Don't want to be
clothes in.
tempted. Don't want to be tempted into wearing trousers like some sort of softie.
You're renting some self-storage lock-up somewhere. Sid's pants graffitied onto the door.
No, you just keep them in a box, mate. Keep them in a box in the cupboard. Forgotten about.
Fair enough. All right.
I think we should move very swiftly on from the subject of Sid's trousers.
I think you're right.
We spent long enough on that topic already.
This is not where I thought that conversation was going to go at all.
Oh. God
Well, yeah, I
damn
mean,
it.
I'd say it derailed the podcast, but I don't think the podcast was even on rails. It's like HS2. It's just a divot in the ground at this point.
Yeah.
Soon to be abandoned, it would seem.
Yes. Soon to become the world's biggest skate park.
Aye.
Well, that's our topical joke for the day.
Done. Take that off your box.
See, we're relevant. We watch the
we
news.
have to add one word. Allegedly.
Allegedly, yes.
So, have you guys been playing lots of games? I know Steve and I have gotten together and we've been playing a few recently.
Oh, you've done better than me then, because I've struggled to play anything the last few weeks.
I have played a few.
To be fair, Rory is very keen. He does turn up. He says he's going to turn up at 7 and turns up at 6:30 at the door and like he's got a bag full of games. Like, we're playing.
We go. I was really proud of myself yesterday that I arranged it and I parked at 6:59.
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah,
Nice.
yeah,
Oh, nice.
On the button
yeah.
completely.
Impressive.
yeah. Is anybody surprised by my punctuality? No, not really.
No, not at all.
No.
No, I've got one of those Hermione Granger little time turner things. It's just
just
over
gonna
Andy's
smile
head
and nod.
completely. Okay.
She is a character from a book. That's as
She is
much
a
as I am aware.
Really random aside, actually. I went on the Harry Potter studio tour the other day and saw the time turner prop, and it's a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be.
Really?
Wasn't it just an egg timer?
No, it was like a bracelet, like something that goes on a necklace with a piece of jewelry that twists around.
Was
But
it not, Steve? Just because it seemed bigger because it was closer to you and not on a big screen miles away.
Or on a very small child?
Yeah.
Maybe it could be that. I just had imagined it was like, I don't know, 2 centimeters tall, but it was like more like 6 or 8 kind of tall. So
Okay.
I think
one of those weird things.
we might be doing the Father Ted thing with you and small
We could
cows
be,
and
yes.
big cows.
Near, far
Near
away.
cows and far away cows, Steve.
But Steve and I have been playing some games, and we're going to briefly talk about one of the games that we played last night. It was a preview copy sent to us, and we are going to talk about it more fully after we've played it more. But we're going to give you some initial first thoughts on this, and it's Old King's Crown from Eerie Idle Games, and we've talked about this at the Expo this year and the Expo last year, because it looks beautiful and it really took our fancy on both occasions. But last night, Steve and I played a proper 2-player game, and it's rather good.
it is. No, Andy, did you play this? I know
Rory and I
Sid looked at
played
it.
sort of a round and a half or something at the Expo last year, so 2022, which is
It's
where we kind of
moved
took our
on
interest.
considerably.
Yes. Okay. I sense a big smelly butt coming, but go on.
No,
No. There's some. It's weird, right? I don't think, if you actually boil this game down, I don't think it's very original, and that's not a bad thing because it's a kind of not a base breaker like Smash Up or Marvel Snap.
Yep.
And it's not quite a lanes game, which I can't think of a decent lanes game because loads of people rip it off. But I do get a really strong sense of game déjà vu. This feeling that you've played this game before.
Yeah.
So you have 3 districts on the board, and the core of the game, and this is actually at the middle of the game, is you play a card down to each of these districts, and they're played face down, and each one's got a random, random strength. Each of them has got a strength and sometimes a special ability, and then everyone reveals those cards. Whoever has the highest strength wins in that region and can activate one of the powers. 2 powers in each region can activate it. Powers do all kinds of crazy things. Cards in your hand do all kinds of crazy things, and those things on top of that. So in that way, it's not an original game. It feels like something we've played before, but it feels a lot better than the ones we've played before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Now, and I'm not talking about the artwork. There was a point where me and Rory were desperately looking at our cards, thinking, which one do I want to win? How do I win this? And the way in which the effects work was really keeping us kind of really edging forward and into the fight a long time, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It was really interesting. It was bizarre. It had this real Euro game feel to it. Every decision was so important. I had to try, and I was trying to do so many things at once, but I could only do so many. I wanted to win this one, and I wanted to win this one, and I needed to get that one. But to do that, I needed to do this, this, and this. But I've only got 3 cards. I can only use 3 cards. And I have to make sure they're in the right place. And then there's this level of bluffing as well. I've got to try and anticipate what Steve's going to do because I'm aware of what he might have in his hand and what his abilities are as his player abilities to try and make sure that I'm either misleading him or not going to fall prey of his trap. It was a really, really good 2-player game, and it seesawed back and forth. It was dynamic. It was interesting. There was a point where I got a little bit grumpy because I thought I was going to lose, and I did. But I thought I was like, I'm going to lose now. Whatever happens, Steve's just going to snowball and run away with it. but he didn't manage to run away with it. It ended up being a very close game, and it went
Casual
on.
saunter.
Yeah, it got very, very close. And I think it was Steve got one ability he triggered one ability that he'd kept secret from me all game, which allowed him to completely dick me over, and that won him the game. But we both thought it's going to be over now, next round, and then it wasn't. It went on a bit more, and then it went on a bit more. Really dramatic game it was last night. It's fantastic.
So is it designed as a 2-player game? Or can you play with more?
I love you've asked that question, Andy.
It's up to 4 players.
But
Well, this is kind of, you mentioned the big stinky butt earlier. This is possibly one big stinky butt element. We played it 2 players and it felt like a 2-player game.
Yeah.
is it like Tainted Grail? It's theoretically up to a 4-player game, but plays best as 1.
Or conversely, it just scales beautifully, which I think is where these 2 gentlemen are actually going and why they want to explore. They want to try it at higher play
which
count.
is what we don't want to kind of say back this game now because we've only played it 2-player and we don't want to find it 4-player it's horrible, slow and a turgid mess.
Yeah.
Or whether it's 4-player it's just as dynamic and maybe even better.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of we don't want to be one of those review channels or podcasts that just as a solo play and says the game is good or bad. Not gonna name any names there.
Why? Who would do that? Who would only play a game solo and then review it?
I don't know.
No, it's just, it was a theoretical.
Theoretically, yeah.
Hypothetically speaking. Well, we should leave it there.
Yeah.
Let people
I
make
think
up
we
their
should,
own
yeah.
minds.
So, but this game is what, coming to Kickstarter in
24th.
24th, right?
24th of October, this comes to Kickstarter. By then, we will aim to play it at least 3, ideally 4 players, maybe both. I'm really interested because I think the asymmetry, there wasn't much asymmetry when we played it in 2019. Steve's faction was very different to my faction. And I'd like to see how the other factions work. And now that I know how my one works, it would change how I play next time. It was subtle, but very good.
I should also point out, as we were packing the game away, Rory picked up, I can't remember if it was the player board or the reference card, and went, oh, there's a guide on here for the strategy for my faction.
Yeah.
That would have been useful an hour and a half ago.
Yeah. On one side, it gives you the turn order. All I need to do is just flip it over and go, but didn't think of it.
Failed the Krypton test there.
Yeah, I
Factor test. So, is it about an hour and a half then for 2 players, give or take? Bearing in mind, you presumably had to learn it as well.
We played for 2.5 hours, but that included punching it, reading through the rules, learning it as those first 2 or 3 turns, we were kind of following the rule book. After that, it zipped along quite nicely.
Yeah, it zipped along quite nice, yeah. And I would also say it's a prototype when we sent, of course. And apart from one rules question, we didn't have any issue with that rule book at all.
Oh, that's good.
Which was really good for that level of for the stage which it's at. It hasn't hit Kickstarter yet. That rule book, apart from this one question, felt like it was done.
Wow, that's good.
Which is really good.
And it says that question might actually be in there, but it's when you're sat at the table trying to find it. We couldn't. We just kind of made best case, experienced decision on it. And I think we were probably right. And I think it's probably going to be in that book because it was filled with loads of really good examples. But Old King's Crown, Eerie Idle Games, coming to Kickstarter on the 24th. The next episode, 137, will probably have a more in-depth review of a multiplayer game.
He says optimistically.
It's definitely going to happen. Definitely.
Is it?
Yeah, we'll find a slot because I'm getting a Twitch because I have been playing a tile laying game, but it's not a very fun game.
You've been playing the Real World Azul.
I've been doing Real World Azul, and it's driven me nuts.
Is that just called The Bathroom?
It's tiling the bathroom. Yeah, it's a really joyless, thankless task. You just sit on your own in the dark. Well, not in the dark because that's a bit silly, but. So I want to break out of that, and I do actually want to play a game before next time.
It's a good idea. Well, speaking of games what we've only been playing once, and we're going to play again with more players, because I think this definitely needs more players, is
Parks. No.
relatively new, definitely not. But Oh, sorry, that's let a cat out of a bag there, isn't it? Is the very recent release of Expeditions from Stonemaier Games, which is
Scythe 2.
Scythe 2, Scythier.
Scythier. Why didn't they call it Scythier? That's brilliant.
That's a good question. So, Expeditions, yes, Stonemaier Games, very nicely put together, very big box. I went for the Ironclad edition with the big metal mechs.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. There's lots of room in that box for expansions, it would seem, so it looks like Stonemaier have planned ahead.
Of course they did.
Expeditions is a lot lighter than Scythe. Because Scythe is... I wouldn't describe Scythe as a heavy game, but there's a lot to it. So if you've not played it, it's...
I think now we consider it a medium game, but I remember when it came out, it felt quite heavy.
Yes, no, it's also a pain in the arse to teach. But Expeditions is much lighter. The rulebook is definitely smaller. It's a 1 to 5 player game. I've played it at 2, so Laura and I played it, in fact, last night as we record this podcast. And it's reasonably easy to set up. So the idea is that it's kind of set after the rise of Fenris. If you've got the expansions to Scythe, it's set after that that kind of sort of resettable campaign, which I have yet to play. But never mind. So the idea is that something has hit Tunguska. So if you remember the alleged meteorite hitting Tunguska in the 30s, I think it was. But this is set in the alternative universe in which Scythe exists. So the same kind of event has happened, and you and your faction are exploring the kind of the area. And like in Scythe, you can score certain areas. So you put a star on like a scoring area, you'll get some points, you'll get some money for that. Expeditions is kind of similar. So it's a kind of a cross between Scythe and something else, and I'm trying to work out what the something else. Tapestry. That's what it is. It's only in the sense, yeah, not in a negative way though, because we all thought Tapestry was a big pile of arse with a side of butter, whereas I have to say Expeditions is much better. But that wouldn't be hard. So ultimately, it's a card-based game. So you're collecting cards to do actions. And each card has kind of different things on it. So there's a bit at the top that you'll always get when you play it, and there's a bit at the bottom you can stick a worker on when you play it, and you'll do like an extra thing. So it could be move a bit more, explore a bit further, get some stuff, do a particular action, that kind of thing. So you'll get specific actions, but you can tuck cards underneath your board to do kind of ongoing bonuses, and ultimately the first person to chuck 4 stars down onto the scoring track ends the game, and the person with the most money at the end of the game wins. So I've played it with 2. It took quite a lot longer because Laura's quite a slow player, it would seem. She was reading everything, and I was just kind of playing on gut instinct, which is probably why he thrashed me by a factor of 2, but we'll gloss over that. But it was interesting. I can see it being sort of played in the sense that it would reward going back to it. So you could kind of work out, you could understand what all the cards do, you could get used to what all the because each kind of hex represents a site, and each site can do a different thing. So you can move your mech onto it and do something, or you can play a card, or you can move around, or whatever it is. And each site does a different thing. So comboing all of that together with the cards you have is obviously how you become efficient and how you get points and how you do lots of things in the turn. So it's all about that. So it was fun. We did enjoy it. I think, given that we've played it now once, I think we could probably get through it in about an hour, which I think is about the playtime, because it took us quite a couple of hours last night to get through it. But again, there was a bit of learning, a bit of getting used to it, and obviously Laura considering every move in detail, whereas I just went dump, 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 next, done. But as I say, she won by a factor of 2, which is quite embarrassing. But never mind. So, as I say, it plays up to 5. I think it'll be more interesting with 5, purely because people will be turning things over more. And I wouldn't really say getting in each other's way necessarily, because you don't really interact that much. It's like Scythe, it's multiplayer solitaire, other than you can't share a space with another mech. So if somebody's gone somewhere, you can't go there. Other than that, you're kind of on your own.
So there's no tractor fights like in Scythe?
No, there's no fighting at all.
Tractor fights.
You can't really interact with anybody.
It's my big joke about Scythe that it was touted as being this like combat game with tanks, and then you look at what the tanks are, the mechs, they're actually just tractors with guns on in the odd spot.
They're basically APCs on legs.
Yeah.
So that's Expeditions. We'll go into more detail once we've played it with more players. It works fine with 2, but because it's quite a big board and the board doesn't scale with players, I think we were quite separate.
Yeah.
So I think a little bit more getting in each other's way in terms of, well, I'm going to go here and stop you doing that. I think would be a little bit more interesting. I am led to believe by a certain not wizard that it is best with 3. But I may be misremembering, but we shall see.
We could potentially be having a 5-player game day soon, so that's a good candidate.
It is. And like Old King's Crown, the rulebook is actually very good.
Okay.
Yes, there were no real problems with understanding. There was one thing I had to look up online and then discovered it in the rulebook anyway, so that's just my own stupid fault for not reading. Other than that, it's very straightforward. So yeah, really easy. Mechanically.
Now, you briefly mentioned at the beginning of this description another game. Begin with P.
Yes.
You've recently played Parks, have you?
I have, yes, because you played it and recommended it to us all because you loved it so oodly much.
I did. Those are exactly the words I used,
yes.
oodly much.
Yes, I might be paraphrasing and utterly misquoting you. In fact, I think the words you used were something along the lines of dog shit. But,
I was glad I was a smoker when I played that. Gave me something to do while God. Yeah.
Now, you played it as a 5-player, didn't you?
I did.
Yes.
I did.
Funnily enough, so did I.
Right.
So I've had the same experience you did.
But without the smoke breaks. So
without
you had
the
to
smoke
sit and
breaks.
endure it all. Okay.
No, I just went to the bar instead. But there was 5 of us, and it took us about 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
And it's not a difficult game. You literally move your character 1 or 2 or 3 steps along this little track, do the thing, get the stuff, next player. I don't understand how it took so bloody long.
And in a 5-player game, you just move your player to the next available space. There's no choice. You're never going to go further than that, and you can't go...
there's the bonfire. You can go there and do that, and you can go somewhere where there is somebody who uses your bonfire. Only once. Unless you're clever and you go somewhere that relights your fire. Better take that.
Yeah. But which
yes,
you can only do once. So once you've made that one interesting choice in this game, every other turn is just, well, I'm just going to go to the next available space.
Now, we played it with the expansion.
I'm sorry.
It had tents. So, well, no, you say that, but it did actually give us slightly more choice because there's an extra wee board and you basically go into a tent into Narnia or something that takes you to a different board to give you different actions.
Juice.
They're not particularly interesting actions. Like, they'll just give you extra stuff, or they'll give you, like, if you'll do one thing to get something else, like you'll pay 1 tree and get 5 water or whatever. So it's things like that, or you can move a guy to the end but do like an extra purchase action or something like that. But it just gives you a bit more wiggle room in a 5-player game. And I think it's needed, but it's just too long a 5-player game. It was not a fun because we got to the end of like season 3. Thought, we're finished now. Oh no, we've got winter to do. Yeah. Oh God. And the thing's, the game gets bigger as you go further through it. Yeah. Oh God. No.
Yeah, you actually give me a bit of PTSD. I'd forgotten about winter.
I'm so sorry.
I'd forgotten there was a 4th season. I did the exact same thing. But I've been reliably informed by someone who's a gaming opinion I trust that it's actually a good game at the lower player counts.
I can believe it because it's over faster. Weirdly, I didn't hate it, but that's probably because I was just arsing about in the downtime. And I had like 4 pints, so it was fine. Life was a bit more pleasurable. But I can kind of jump on the bus you were on, mate. Having played it as well, no, not at 5, maybe at 3.
Interestingly, if you go onto Board Game Geek, they've got the player count stats, and you can actually add to that poll and make a choice as to what you think is the best player count, and it comes up with best at 69% is 3-player, and then it says 60.7% of people say it's not recommended at 5, and 99.3% say it's not recommended at more than 5.
It does more than 5?
What? Apparently so.
I think it was 5 we played it at. Was it 6?
Well, bizarrely it says
was
1 to
5.
5 players, so maybe that's a peculiarity of the BGG poll.
Potentially, yes. I thought it was just a 5-player game.
I think
But anyway,
I personally would prefer to play Parks 1 player than to play it 5 player again. And I'm not even sure whether you can play Parks at 1 player, but I would try and do it.
1 to 5, apparently.
Really? Okay, well, that's it. I'm well up for playing it solo, but never 5.
so that's Parks. It's just no.
Just no.
See, I want to play this at 3 player now to see if it's actually an interesting game and just doesn't work at 5, or whether it actually just is a bad game. Right then, let's talk about a game then we did enjoy and did play properly, Rory.
Go for it.
Which is I think this is a really intriguing game, and we played this 3 player, and I think this is a game which can play up to 4, and ideally you want 3 or 4 to really get this game to pop.
Yeah.
And this is a game called Block and Key.
It is.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is going to be very difficult to describe. So, to my fellow podcasters and those listening, if you can get onto the internet now, go search image searches for this game, because my description was going to struggle here. Right? So, this is a game which is like, it's a block making pattern matching game. You will have patterns you have to make, which are made. Is it 2 coloured tiles?
3 different colours.
3 different colours. So you have to make these patterns, and you can rotate these patterns, but you can't flip and reverse like you can in other games. So you can rotate the card to get the pattern, and you do this with like 3-dimensional blocky like polyomino pieces.
Yeah,
like
so you
Tetris
think
blocks.
of like Tetris blocks.
but
But imagine it as in chunky, proper stone kind of polymer clay kind of
Yeah,
things.
they are made out of polymer clay. They've got a really good heft to them. Yeah.
They've got a good heft, yeah. And what's interesting about this game is the pattern is only visible from your side of the board. So when you place a piece down, there's rules about how you can place them. You can't just plonk them absolutely anywhere. You have to lay them over other pieces in a certain way, and they can't go over. You have to match heights in a certain
They've
way.
got to be either diagonally adjacent, or if they're actually adjacent, they've got to be higher than the piece that they're next to. I think that's about it. But,
But you've got a whole board in which you can lay it on, which like goes quite deep. But your pattern could only be visible from where you're sitting on your facing of the board. And because this is a 3-dimensional piece...
On a 3-dimensional board.
The other players are viewing the board from one of the other 3 compass points, and so they're seeing a different version of the pattern. Mm-hmm. So you lay what you want the block to be to make your pattern, and you may have screwed up someone else, or you may have actually helped someone else, because their pattern now changes. Or you might have ended up putting stuff behind pieces that are already in place that makes a difference, so you could put pieces in front. So there's this weird push-pull in the game where you put something down and go, right, 1 more piece, and I've made this 10-point pattern or whatever it is. I'm gonna score loads of points. And somebody else comes along and places a piece in front of it, and their answer is, well, I didn't do it on purpose because I can't see what your patterns are.
Because you're never going to play to do a literal dick move. You're never going to do that. You're just only ever playing. You only care about your perspective, and that's the really interesting thing about this game. It is a game about it's like a tile layering game, but 3-dimensional. But you only care about your perspective, and you have to, when you're playing 2 players, you have to sit opposite each other, and 3 players you sit in this. It is a fascinating game, and it is unlike anything I've ever played before.
Yeah, it's weird in that, you just said like a game is multiplayer solitaire. Mm-hmm. Well, this is multiplayer solitaire, but your actions are influencing what's happening on everyone else's view.
But with no malice at all.
But with no malice and no purpose to it at all.
Interesting. It looks awesome.
It is such a clever and unique idea. Now, the only issue I have with it is you have to stand it up quite high, and there is a point where you have to keep just adjusting yourself in your seat to kind of get your view to line up perfectly to what you should see, just in case you get a bit of parallax error if you're sitting up too high or too low kind of thing. Yeah. So there's a little bit of a sit back and go, have I got that pattern or not kind of thing. But it's got a weird kind of skill to it because you've got absolutely no influence about what all the other players are doing.
No.
So it's about trying to do things in such a way that you think players can't screw it up, but you've got no idea what the other players are going to do, so you can't plan ahead for it too much. But it doesn't feel like that's happening in a bad way. You're like some games where somebody does something that screws up your plan. You feel like you want to, sometimes kick this chair from under them and,
Yeah.
In this, you're like, oh, bugger. And that's all it is. It's like, oh. Not like, I'm going to kill you.
In this game, it just means that you now have to, and it feels like it almost forces you to be more creative in how you solve the problem that they've just created for you. They've put this piece down, and you've gone, right, that's not what I wanted them to do. How do I use what they've done, or not? How do I pivot from this? It almost like it presents a new challenge. It is fantastic, and I want to say that the way they've produced this game, the production quality on this game is stunning. The box turns into the board. You've got these 4 little cardboard legs that slot into the box, so the base of the box becomes the lower floor, which is your market for your pieces. Then the top of the box becomes the lid where you're playing, becomes your terrain. The actual board that you're playing on, and then the edges of the board, the top board, actually tell you in kind of iconography, which is very kind of stylistic of that game, like temples and Incan. It's got an Incan vibe to it. But the edge of the board actually tells you the rules in pictograms, and then the legs that hold the board up actually give you the victory conditions for a 2, 3, and 4 player game. The board tells you how to set up, how to play, and how to win, all in images.
That's very clever,
and it's
indeed.
all done in this. It's all done in the art style as like it's an ancient temple. It's really clever. The bag, the little cotton bag with block and key embroidered into it. These pieces are really nice, like weighty clay pieces. They feel nice. They sound nice. There's a nice click to them when they go on the board. The production quality of this game is absolutely phenomenal.
It looks amazing.
And it looks really interesting on the table. I took this to a games club a couple of months ago, and everybody that walked past this was like, ooh, what is this? It isn't like anything I've played before. I mean, I've got like Burgle Brothers. That's got like a tower. Burgle Brothers 2 is a tower. Holy has a tower. This is a tower, but it's more than that. The whole look of it is wonderful. It's a great puzzle game, and apparently I was told by the guys at the stand at the expo that kids seem to do really well at this game. That they've got this. Children seem to have a really good way of naturally being good at pattern recognition and this 3D manipulation. It's not a very heavy game, and I think it's one that you could definitely break out with little players. And probably have your ass handed to you.
My brains that still work and have been addled by lack of sleep and large amounts of alcohol over the years.
Oh, that's the cause, is it?
Yeah,
that's what I'm doing wrong.
Bad news. Or maybe lack of alcohol, I don't know.
So that's Block and Key from Inside Up Games. Definitely worth checking out. You will be pleasantly surprised by this game. I don't think anyone's going to play this and not think it's interesting. You might not think it's for you, but you will definitely come away going, that was different.
The design's incredible, especially making use of the box. It's very clever.
Very, very clever.
Well, on the sense of very pretty games, I have been playing a game from Final Frontier Games. So they're the people who did Cavern Tavern, Rise to Nobility, Merchant's Cove, things like that. And this is a new series of games they're creating called the Pillars of Creation series. So the idea is that these games in this series are all about the myths and legends around the creation of the universe.
Right.
So how the stars and the universe and stuff came to be. So there are 2 games in this series so far. There is Solani and there is The Girl Who Made the Stars. And both of them are currently, these 2 are based on the sort of North American, sort of Native American kind of mythos about, the way the constellations are formed and how the universe was built. But I've been playing I've only played The Girl Who Made the Stars once with Alora, but I'd like to play with more players because it's a bit more involved and I think it would be even more fun with more players. But I've been playing a lot of Solani recently, and it plays up to 4 players. And it's quite a light game, so probably sounds similar in weight and sort of heft linked to block and key. And the idea is that you are basically building a constellation map on your board. So the whole thing is made, you get a little player mat in front of you, which is a lovely neoprene thing, pre-printed. Each player's board is basically the same, apart from one of them, which has got a sort of starting player symbol on, so you just dish them out at random. And the idea is that each round you will take a star field, so basically a disc, and a kind of a cross, which is a path. So the idea is that the paths will link the star fields as if, like in a constellation, so a star with a path and a star and a path and so on and so forth. And the idea is that, or you can put in planets. And the idea is that every time you put a star field in, which contains 2, 3, or 4 stars, you must have that number of paths linked to that star field. So if you have 3 stars on your star field, on your disc, then you have to have 3 paths connecting to it. Otherwise, they don't score any points at the end of the game. And that would be worth 3 points at the end of the game, for example, if you had 3 connecting paths. And you do this across this sort of grid. But to mix it up, and this is kind of a little bit like block and key, everyone starts the game from their own perspective. You draw one card out that's got a map on it, and it's got 4 positions where these sort of black crosses go, where you can't put anything, that have no links on. And everyone sets their board up relative to their perspective of that card. So everyone's starting position is different, which is quite cool. Yeah, it's quite clever.
So
Very
is
simple,
the idea
very
here
clever.
that, I'm trying to think thematically here, is the idea here that you're at different compass points looking at the same part of the sky, or are you at the same point looking at the sky in different compass points?
That's a very interesting question. I don't know. I like your first interpretation, though, because that might work. It's not really explained, it's just to give a bit of mix-up. But the idea is that there are north, south, east, and west parts of your sky. So essentially there's a top bit, a bottom bit, and it's just, top bits. And during the game, you'll also have 4 cards which have extra sort of bonus scoring conditions. So whenever you surround one of these dark paths, one of these dark things that you start with other paths, so basically all 4 points of their cross have been surrounded, you have to turn it over, and you get one of these 4 special discs that you start the game with. Everyone's is different, and that will give you an additional scoring condition to give you a couple of points. So they usually vary on where you will put them on the sky. So like, say if you put it in the north part of the sky and it's sharing the space with 2 other bright stars, so like there's white stars in there as well, then you'll get an extra point. So you can get like maybe up to 2 points for each of these things. But a lot of the time you won't score, but you have to put one in. So the game becomes quite difficult to manage, especially later in the game when you've got less flexibility about where you put things. There's rules about where you have to put things. So you have to put stars next to paths and paths next to stars, but there's quite a lot of flexibility on how you do that. So it's not so restrictive, but it does stop you putting just things randomly and plonking them down. But ultimately, at the end of the game, everyone will fill their star field, and you'll get points for planets, you get points for stars, and you'll get points for these sort of little extra bonus conditions that you get. Planets are fun because when you take a star, you draft stars and paths. So everyone takes a path or a star or a star, and then you go backwards. So last person to pick obviously picks up one of each, and then you go backwards. So it's fair. Planets cannot have any connections to them at all, because they don't in the constellations, because they move around. So it's very, very thematic. And of course, that might be quite difficult later on when you're forced to take a path that you have to put next to a planet that links that planet with something, which is quite infuriating, I'm not going to lie. Someone robs the path that you want, and there was a bit of swearing. But ultimately, it's a very simple game, but very thinky. It's very beautiful.
I like the sound of this. When you are, and we've talked about this before, because you've mentioned how the theme comes through a lot in the mechanics here. So when you're teaching the rules, are you teaching the rules quite colourfully using the theme, do you think? Because I always like that when I can explain the rules and kind of hang the rules on the story, the narrative that you're going to tell as you play.
No. Until now I haven't, but you know what? From now on I might do.
Right, okay.
Based on this feedback, what you've just given me, I think that's actually quite a good idea. Because the last game I played of it, considering this is quite a light game and it should take you about 45 minutes, maybe to an hour if there's 4 of you, it took us about 2 hours with my gaming group, because for some reason they just kept forgetting the rules. And there aren't many to start with, to be honest. But it's a very straightforward game. It's quite thinky, to be fair, about And because once everyone's drafted their pieces, they kind of work solo, a bit like you do in Dice Hospital. You just kind of put your things down, then it's the next round. But there's only 2 bits to put down, so it's not a lot of thought. Because sometimes you'll have it, well, that just goes there because I've got an idea of what I want to do, that kind of thing. So yeah, it's somewhere up to about an hour for up to 4 players.
All right, I'm up for a game of that.
But it's
Sounds
very,
like
very beautiful, very lovely, very well made. 5 neoprene mats, 1 in the middle, 1 for each player, and a bunch of wooden tokens. And that's about it. Although, weirdly, if you get beyond 20 points, which is all it has on the middle map for the score track, you get this little green star that indicates that you've got, more than 20 points. But it just looks so cheap compared to the rest of the game. It just looks weird.
It looks really nice. It looks really well produced.
Oh, it is. It's absolutely lovely.
Are they like baker-like pieces, are they?
They're wooden.
Are they wooden?
But they're really nicely made. They're chunky. They feel nice. They're good to put down, and it's very satisfying once you've made this little map on the table. When you start, it's like, what the hell are we trying to do here? How does this all work? But once it's all fit together, you're like, oh, that's quite pretty.
Oh, it does look nice. It does look nice.
It is. But as I say, I got this with the girl who made the stars as well, so it's kind of like a double bundle Kickstarter thing. But neither of them were particularly expensive. I think, if I remember rightly, this was about 35, 40 quid tops. Neither of them were overly expensive. I think the girl who made the stars was probably slightly more because there's a bit more to it. But I'll talk about the girl who made the stars once we played it with a few more players, because I think it would come alive a bit more with more players, because that has more player interaction, because you're actually building constellations together, which allows you to reach extra parts of the board. But more on that later. But yes, that was Solani, and that's from Final Frontier Games. And it is very, very nice. I really like it. It's a very clever game. And of course, because it's a straightforward drafting game, it scales really well from 2 to 4 players. So there's always 1 more token in the market for each type than there is players. So there's always a choice. So you're never sort of left short. But there's always the same number of rounds because the board's the same size. So it's very cleverly made.
Oh, very good. Well, we've had a bit of a whistle-stop tour of a bunch of games today, chaps. So I think, shall we dive into the mailbag?
Yes.
Ooh, shall we?
I think Sid's been very quiet.
I think Sid.
I think he's still embarrassed about his shortage.
Well, what I'm getting, I'm a bit annoyed at Andy because he's gone on to a tile laying game when I specifically asked him not to go on about tile laying games.
They're not tiles, they're tokens.
It comes under the tile laying category. Therefore, it's tile laying. I'm now having PTSD flashbacks to real life Azul.
Well, I don't care. I love seeing you twitch, so you get to pick the first question.
You win. Right, questions. Go, hang on a second. Okay, I've got a question. So, Torrin Spence asks us, best game to corrupt board gamers into the world of miniature war games.
Oof.
Mr. Tudor, this is the itch you have been trying to scratch for weeks, months, even.
Actually, I did get a bit of a scratch over weeks, and me and Rory actually played Star Wars Armada. So yeah, we played. I think a 400 point game is a standard game, and we played 300 points. So it was a slightly smaller game, but yeah, I've forgotten how much fun that game is as you try and get your ships to bear and realise that you cannot turn them quick enough to get the main guns into range. No. while the Star Destroyer is just slowly bearing down on you, getting closer and closer with its huge guns.
So I think that's a solid answer, though, Steve. To be honest,
to be fair, actually, that era of FFG miniature games is that, because FFG had this thing of being, well, we're a board game company, and here's some miniature games that we're going to put enough bling and spritz and polish on to make you think you're buying a board game when you're not. So X-Wing, Star Wars Armada are the first 2 because neither of them required you to paint or assemble the miniatures. They're all pretty there.
Which I think is a solid win if you're going to be corrupted, because that's half the work gone, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. all the tokens are in your proper board game tokens. You punch out cards for all your stats come in the game. Look at like 40k. You buy the miniatures, you've got to assemble them. I'm not, if you want them to look nice, you've got to paint them.
Yeah.
If you want tokens, you've got to either make your own or buy their over expensive ones. You want data cards, you have to buy the full pack of them. They're a ridiculous amount of money.
Yeah.
Star Wars, X-Wing, Armada, there it is, in a nice little package all ready to go. It's all neat, it's done.
With a lovely accessible theme thrown on top.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, we played this game and I lost, believe it or not, chaps. But at the end of that game, I was like, I need to go buy myself some TIE interceptors and some TIE bombers. Because Steve likes playing as the Rebels, so he's got all the cool shit for the Rebels. And I was like, I really could have done with some TIE bombers. I really could. So I'm like, maybe I'll just go buy those. So next time Steve and I can play, I've got a bit more choice.
That's a good idea.
And I'm quite happy with miniatures. I don't play many miniature games because I can't be asked with all the painting. But I am thinking, actually, Star Wars Armada. If Steve said we're going to play Star Wars Armada next month, I would 100% go buy some pieces for it.
You've kind of answered what I was going to say as well. I was basically going to say the FFG games like Mansions of Madness, Journeys in Middle-earth, Star Wars Imperial Assault, Descent, all of them.
Yeah. They're like the one level slightly below the X-Wing and actually Imperial Assault, although it's not very widely played, that came with a 2-player skirmish game in the box as well.
Yes.
And it comes with, when you bought the extra characters, so I remember when they did this weird thing, when you bought the main box, you got a free Darth Vader miniature.
And Luke Skywalker.
It's Luke Skywalker. And they came in the boxes separately inside the main box. They came up packaged as if you bought them separately. And within them was a special scenario for playing it in the 2-player conflict game, which was basically just a bog standard straight up fight. Well, it wasn't straight up fight, it was scenario based. But that was a miniatures game using the board game rules that you could play 2-player as well.
Yes.
So again, I mean, it's a Star Wars game, but that's the kind of thing you're looking at, definitely.
Because every wave that they released, 11 of them, because I heard them, every little blister pack, which basically was a miniature version of some of the tokens you got in like the expansion or the base box. It basically just made your game better. But as Steve says, every blister pack came with an unfoldable kind of map and a skirmish. So every blister pack has one of those maps in it. I've got a deck about an inch thick of these bloody things because there's that many of these blister packs. But there's hundreds of maps now, so I'm never, ever going to run out of Star Wars stuff to play. But it's right. It's essentially a tabletop skirmish game without really being a tabletop skirmish game. It's very clever.
So tabletop skirmish game without the hassle.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good way of gateway drugging people into playing a miniature war game, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think if you do want to get Imperial Assault, you better get a shift on, because I have a funny feeling it's going to go out of print very soon. It's not officially out of print, but FFG are, well, obviously FFG are not a patch on what they were, but they haven't really confirmed they're going to reprint it.
X-Wing is in a weird place as well, because that moved to Atomic Mass Games, and so you've also got this weird thing. I think Armada's an even weirder place, that they haven't said they're discontinuing it or not supporting it, but at the same time haven't supported it in a long time. So I think they're one of these things where they've actually got limited production capacity, or a limit to the production capacity, and so therefore they have to prioritise. At the moment, it's Marvel Crisis Protocol and Star Wars Shatterpoint, which are the two big ones, which are dedicated miniatures games. They are full-on miniatures games, but you can tell that they are the one. Now, I haven't played Shatterpoint yet. I picked up at Expo. Marvel Crisis Protocol and Star Wars Shatterpoint would be a good next step, because again, although Atomic Mass Games is a different company, they follow that very much FFG thing. So everything you need in the box, you don't have rulers, you don't have tape measures, everything's got little plastic rulers to measure things with. The dice are set dice which are used, the cards, the tokens,
the cards. Are the miniatures like fully formed, or do they still have to put them together? Yes,
no, they are proper miniatures game miniatures. You don't have to assemble them, and they're very nice. And the Shatterpoint does actually come with terrain comes with a nice, chunky lot of terrain, which I've double-checked against my 40k and Infinity miniatures, and there's a slight scale disparity, but they don't look out of place.
Is it close enough for government jazz, is what you're saying?
It's close enough for
Are
government
they
jazz, yes.
32 mil scale, are they? Are they?
No. Shatterpoint. Right. So Infinity is at classic 28 millimeter.
Yeah. Which is the same. Games Workshop is 28, isn't it?
No.
Oh, right,
Well,
okay.
Games Workshop was 28 in like the 90s.
Right, okay, that's where I remember it from, yeah.
Yeah. And current Games Workshop, I think, is what they call Heroic 32 to a Heroic 35.
Is that different from an Imperial or a metric 32?
Heroic means the proportions are wrong.
Right, okay.
So people's proportions are not accurate, but you don't notice when you first look because it just means the character looks more heroic.
Right.
I can't remember what it is. There's something about chest and heads differences, and then Shatterpoint and Marvel Crisis. I can't say Marvel Crisis Protocol.
Just say MCP. MCP's fine.
MCP is and Shatterpoint about 40 millimeter. So, Darth Maul is bigger than a new Primaris Space Marine, but it's not massively bigger. You look at the two of them next to each other and you don't go, "Oh, that's a massive step up in scale."
Yeah.
And I said, you put an Infinity model next to the computer terminal, and it just looks like it's a bigger terminal. It doesn't actually look like it's a kid playing with the keyboard at high height. It just looks like a bigger console. That's all.
Nice.
So yeah,
I've been flirting with the idea of getting some MCP stuff.
Yeah.
Shut up.
Just the paint.
No, look, no. Mrs. G is obsessed at the moment.
I gotta admit, I took Sue to a war game shop the other day.
Oh.
She nearly walked out with it under her arm.
She nearly walked out with MCP under her. I'm not
Yeah.
even going to try and say it.
Oh dear.
I didn't persuade her one way or the other.
No, you're very quiet. You just led the horse to the water and said, "There you go, and drink." Yeah, so
it's like
you're not
such
getting
a
away
fair
with that
few
easy,
goals.
shooter.
Yeah, a few days later, she's talking to me about removing mould lines from miniatures at 10 o'clock in the evening. For the love of God, woman.
You have a lot to answer for, you two.
Go on, Sid. You lead the way again on this one.
Without showing any kind of favoritism to the question setters, there's a guy here called Rory J. Summers, bracket Hermione, close bracket. And
Technically, it's parentheses, but carry on.
Nice.
Well, it's like he's got the show notes in front of him. But he asks, what game has languished the longest on your shelf of shame, and for how long?
I just need to look something up on the internet
Yeah,
to
so
find
do
the
I.
release date. I've been
What was
with
it
you.
called? Man looks up thing on internet. Oh God, I think I'm pretty sure I know the answer to mine. I have a pretty good feeling it's probably Merchants and Marauders.
How long you had that on there, Anne?
Mine is a Kickstarter game. I know that much.
Merchants and Marauders was one of the longest games on my shelf of shame until I sold it without playing it.
Nice.
Yeah.
because I got to the point where I have not played this game and I've punched it and I've looked at the rules and I've just thought no, it. And so I think someone was selling it on one of the Facebook groups and somebody pointed out it's out of print at the moment, so you can add an extra 10 or 20 quid onto the price of that. And I went,
All right.
slapped it straight onto Facebook and got the extra 10 or 20 quid, and I think they announced the reprint 3 weeks later, so I was quite happy with that.
I think it's been on my shelf of shame now for probably about 5 or 6 years. It's what makes it worse is that it's a present from Alora. I know. The thing is, though, it's like a 5-hour game.
See, I remember to put it into context of age, I bought mine at UK Games Expo when Expo was still in the the hotel, not in the NEC.
Just in the Hilton.
Yeah,
So that's 2016 or previous then.
yeah, and I sold it this year.
Wow.
So that's
7 years.
That's 7 years.
Yeah.
However, I've got a winner.
Oh, here we go.
All right. Okay.
Right, this might actually be the first Kickstarter game I backed. If it's not the first, it's the second, and it's a Cthulhu-based game called Machina Arcana, which I believe, looking at Kickstarter, has now had 2 more versions after it.
Wow.
Wow.
Right, which according to Board Game Geek got released in 2014. So I've had this game 9 years.
9
and I
years.
have not played it.
See, I'm
Still in
at
shrink?
7.
You're at 7. No, and Andy, it's not in shrink. I have punched it. I have sorted it. I've read the rules. I've set it up, I think, 4 times.
And then just gone, you know what? I can't be bothered.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the mood has not hit me. I've got to that point and gone, oh, I'm going to watch TV.
Yeah, I did the same with Merchants and Marauders. I've tried to set it up at least twice, and I just looked at the rule book and went, I'm not feeling this.
So, question for you, gents. Why? Why have they languished on the shelf? Now, Andy, you've kind of already answered this one because you were gifted your game that sat on the shelf. But
It's not why I've not done it. I would like to play it. It's just I think there are newer and shinier things, basically.
My game is a game called Beneath Nexus that came out in 2016. And it's published by Silver Clutch Games, who've only ever made this game. And it was a Kickstarter flashman. I liked the artwork. And when I backed it, I didn't know anything about it. So 2016 was when I first started doing Kickstarter. So I was just backing everything that looked even half interesting. And it turns out it's like a 3 to 6 player game. And it's just like, I just never, at that point, I never had a regular gaming group of 3 or more players. And that was also the same year my son was born. So I immediately became very busy. But continued to buy board games, and they were, of course, newer and shinier. Which doesn't...
Interesting. I've just looked up this game on Board Game Geek, and one of the top reviews just starts off with the word bland. I think that's just a ringing endorsement. Why haven't I played Mindset? It's a very interesting... I think it's a very early Kickstarter. So 2014 is approaching the point when we as UK residents could actually back Kickstarters, because prior to that I think it was 2012 or 2013. Before then you couldn't actually back a Kickstarter because of some weird ways in which anti-fraud rules worked or finance rules worked. And it's, if I remember rightly, looking through it, it's very much feels like a self-published game. And I do remember the rule book being not impossible, but difficult. And it was one of those things that, because I was, and it was also at the time when I was regularly going to like Worcester on a Tuesday night to play games, and I wasn't playing. I don't know why I wasn't playing it at home, but we also were. We've been doing this a while, but Polyhedron Collider as a website going a while, so I was still in Malvern at the time. So we were playing lots of review games as well. It's probably a point when we were doing lots of review stuff. So it was a lot of learning the game before you took it to game night. And every time I tried to learn this game, I was just, maybe I was just tired every time, or maybe just wasn't hitting right. But I just remember going, oh, let's try it again later, kind of thing. But maybe that's the challenge. Maybe I need to bring it out with Rory one night, when he comes over, and actually get through this and find out whether it's a good game or not. Or whether it's...
Well, the thing I was going to say was, at some point, you thought that was going to be a good game. And you haven't given it the opportunity to be shit or good. I mean, you're probably right. Your instincts are probably right. But at some point, you sat there and went, that might... And same as Rory as well. You sat there and you thought, this is a game I want to go at. So there was something about it that you did like. Now,
what's weird is I've kept it, because we mentioned like Merchants and Marauders I've got rid of. There's other few games I've bought. I think it's because it was a Kickstarter game. I've bought other games which I've bought, say, cheap. You remember Mythic Battles? Mythic Battles was the one that came out of all the miniatures.
Don't remember this one.
I can't remember the name of the bloody company. It wasn't Mythic Games that made it. It was the other one. Monolith Games made it.
Oh, yes.
Right.
The massive Kickstarter. However, that was a reprint. That was a second edition. And I remember buying the first edition off like 365 games or something for some bargain price. And I remember doing exactly the same with that, just going through it, going, right, I'm going to play this. I can't be bothered. And after 2 or 3 attempts, I went, well, I only paid 20 quid for it. I'm just going to go in the Bring and buy Aircon or something like that. And I sold it for a £5 or something daft. Whereas this is like, I backed this on Kickstarter. I've put money into this. Yeah. I refuse to get rid of it.
I waited for this. I read the updates. There was some anticipation about this game arriving. I now don't want to get rid of it. Yeah, it is harder to get rid of, I think, to part with Kickstarter games. Not just because I don't think the market is there. Like, I've got some games that, like this one, I've got a few other Kickstarters that were just kind of flash in the pan. I bought them, I played them, and they've never really took off. So I think reselling them is quite tricky sometimes. But equally, I'm less inclined to do so because, like I said, I'm never gonna get that money back. I'm never going anywhere near what I spent on it.
Do you know what you guys are describing to me? The closest I can do, because I haven't got this problem yet. I've got an RPG problem with Shelf of Shame. I've got a stack of those bastards that I don't play. But it's the bad beer problem. When I was younger, no matter how bad the pint was, you'd still drink it because you'd paid for it.
The bad beer problem.
Yeah. So you'd buy a pint and you'd risk a new pint you never tried before, and you'd think, that's a bit shit, that's a bit minging. But young Sid would finish that pint off. Sid now will taste the beer, and if it's rank, right? Even if it's £10 a pint, and go, nope, I'm not having that because it's minging.
Mm.
And now it's all about quality over quantity.
Yeah.
And it seems very similar. You earlier on when you were younger, when there was less about, maybe when it was more of a, as you said, the Kickstarter thing was going on, and you were just backing and backing and backing.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of got lost in that, and now actually what you're doing is you're sifting through stuff more. So I'd be interested. We've kind of spent a bit of time on this, but it's an interesting point. Do you think your Shelf of Shame is older games, or is it newer stuff is still going and ending up on it? And I mean newer stuff in the last.
No, I think that's a really interesting point. I think now, as new games come in, I usually get them played fairly quickly. I can't remember the last time, like every game I've picked up this year, I have played. And probably last year as well.
That, yeah.
So it's the bad beer problem. Your tastes have changed.
There are a couple of games which I've had new, which I'm annoyed I haven't got to the table. I've got Frostpunk, for instance, sitting there, but that's the longest new game that's been sitting there. Most of the things that have turned up, I've managed to get to the table. Ironically, actually, most Kickstarters and things like that which have been delivered, I've got to the table. Stuff I bought at Expo, which was my last big spending spree, or stuff I've bought at a board game shop, I haven't played.
Oh, that's weird.
Oh.
So I bought Skyrim adventure game at a board game shop. I haven't played that. Bought 4 or 5 games at Expo, and of the ones I bought, I haven't played any of them.
Well, you did play. You played my copy of Tiwanaku, didn't you?
Yeah, now Tiwanaku is an interesting one because that was something Amanda wanted to buy rather than something I wanted to buy. So there's a bit more of an impetus there because Amanda wants to play it rather than me wanting to play it. But there's like 4, maybe 5 other games I bought. So Star Wars Shatterpoint, which you mentioned earlier. I mean, I've got to glue, several droids and a Darth Maul together before we can play that. But that's that's part of the process. But yeah, there's several other games I bought. And it's interesting, now you've said, but since then I've had like Castles of Burgundy Special Edition come in, played that. Voidfall, even though me and Sid, our go of that was abysmal and was best be forgotten. It got to the table, it got set up, we played 2 rounds. Mm-hmm. I mean, it wasn't a full game.
It's further than I've got with my copy.
Yeah.
I've got Frostpunk. Not Frost. Yeah, I've got Frostpunk. I've set it up. Took an hour and a half. I haven't played it.
Yeah, that's what's scaring me about that game.
Huge. I mean, it fills my dining table, and that's a big table. It's stupidly big. I've got Frosthaven.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. I've obviously got Voidfall. I've got ISS Vanguard. Oh, I know. And it's looking at me going, Andy, play me. But when it says the introductory learning mission will take 4 hours, you think...
Jesus.
Yeah. It would help if Voidful had said that, wouldn't it, Steve?
Yes, it would have done that. Yeah. Actually, to put that in context, I can see it right from here because it insults me every time I leave the room. I bought Everrain at the last expo, not this year's expo, but previous expo, and it's still in shrink. Ooh. I haven't even opened the box, so that's been there over a year now. So yeah.
Well, on that disappointing note, I think
That's damning admission.
Yes, I think it's time to draw a veil over this podcast.
Pretend like it never happened.
Hang our heads in shame.
Oh, yes. Thank you, everyone, for listening. We've been Polyhedron Collider. If you enjoyed us, please give us a review on your podcast platform of choice and share us, like us, whatever. Any interactions, good interactions as far as our algorithms are concerned. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on X. Well, no, you can't find us on X because we can't be bothered with that anymore. Apparently, Rory used Instagram for the first time in 3 months yesterday, so we're back on that. Apparently, back on the gram.
Back on the gram.
Back on the gram.
And we're also on BGG Guild 2726. Hopefully we're back in 2 or 3 weeks because we want to revisit a couple of games we've already mentioned, which hopefully we can do before the end of the month. Until then, tatty bye and happy gaming.
Ta-ra.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.